Two aspects determine consumers' choice. The first one is relevance. The second one is entertainment. If you think of the daily life, what affects your life daily? Finance, traffic, weather, pollution, and those things are more relevant to their directly related to their daily life. And that's what they are interested in. And that's what we call relevance. So the news as information has to be relevant to people's life. And that's what we meant by relevance. The second aspect is what I call entertainment. After all, we human beings are not just animals. We seek a spiritual pleasure, which means we want to get entertained. You do and I do observe constant mismatch between the coverage and the consumer's news interest. Now, having said that, this doesn't mean the journalists or the news companies are stupid. And when you look at the market, there is a demand, but there is always a supply. If you look at the news market, the demand is the new consumers' preferences. But on the other hand, the supply side, there are all kinds of constraints. Many people want to know the first-hand information about the battlefield in Afghanistan. Well, there are not many journalists there. Even though there are some respectable journalists risking their lives, but still the supply is very limited. So that's first-hand. There is supply constraints. The second one is the production cost. If you want to have first-hand information to satisfy consumers' needs, you need to get your journalists' hands dirty over the site, collect the first-hand information. I'm not talking about the risky fields, just ordinary events you need to send out to journalists. And this is costly. Sending people out and on the site, get the first-hand information, do investigative reports. Those are very costly activities, and in economic terms, costly production function, which again constrained our news supply. That partly explains why we observe this mismatch. If you think of news sources, yes, there are tons of them. If you think what are in consumers' mind when they start choosing news, it's actually very limited. If you think of TV in the US, let me use an example in the US. In the cable TV news, there are only three: CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC. And local news providers in TV is mostly one or two. My point here is, even though we tend to think there are many news providers, what comes to our mind is actually a very limited set of suppliers. For me, the internet is the medium or media form to deliver the news. It's not the content producer. So when you say choice over news, it has to go back to the provider, the content producer, not the medium, which to me is a channel of distribution. I think that both are doable and both are feasible, plausible strategies. And which one to choose depends on the size of your firm. You could choose to specialize your news to certain aspects. For example, there is a weather channel. There is Eurosports for sports, and there is a specialized golf channels. You can always try to specialize in certain aspects of the news, so that this is what I call segmentation, niche markets. And that only applies if you are relatively small. You don't want to address the mass market. But you are big enough, then you can either choose to commoditize your product, which will reduce your profit, or you choose to do more investigative reports, providing in-depth information, provide more analytics to entertain or to attract the consumers. There's a latest survey from Pew. They are saying 31% of the consumers are leaving their current news providers because the content are not providing good quality story. The reason they give is the stories are incomplete, which means that those consumers are looking for in-depth report. To me, the news market is becoming really segmented, which means different consumers in different countries, or even different consumers in the same country, but from different regions, they prefer different news. Now, if you want to become the real big one in the world, it's very difficult to satisfy the various needs, okay? Especially on entertainment aspects. If you really want to do that, and if you have to do that, then you have to focus on the relevance part, which basically means you want to be the one providing the widest available information or dry information, and one piece of dry information, and telling consumers what's going on. Provide this wide variety of information. This is by doing this, you are essentially commoditize your product, which means you need to have an economy of scale to produce the wide range of news, and you need to have the financial strength to fight against any potential entrant into the market. That's the only way to do it. If we focus on the news English channels globally, you have only two. You have BBC and CNN. 80% of them are overlapping. And the small 20% different contents are the key part where they differentiate themselves. So that's why there are CNN viewers and the BBC viewers internationally. They are watching it because the 20% are different. And that's the major driving force, which in our business school language, which means in the global market, if you want to become the true global players, you may face the minimally differentiated markets. Your products will have a minimal degree of differentiation, which you have tried to live with that, which means you have to compete on economy of scale.